Okay, so for this video, I'm going to be covering bounding boxes and how they work, what they do, and how to kind of leverage them for making something in Far Cry 5's arcade editor. So you can see right off the bat in this level, there are a ton of bounding boxes. And the way they work is in the top of the game panel, you have this tab called AI Management. So we go ahead and click on that. And then from there you want to look at your control zones. And now with the control zones, you have a couple options. Let me get this out of the way here. So for your animals, what you want to use is the territory bounding box. So we can take a look at a territory bounding box over here. And this will basically define a territory, and it's pretty straightforward. So if I were, let's create a new territory for some animals, let's say over here. So let's go back to my management, let's go to animals, grab a territory, and we'll bring a territory in. And so for here I have what looks like maybe, yeah, some rabbits or hares. So with the bounding box, the way to scale the box, and you can change it to a cylinder. You really only have two options, a cylinder or a box. That's really it. So we can pick whatever we want. The big thing I've noticed with this is you want to make sure you're encompassing most of the ground. You don't have any clipping issues with these bounding boxes. So you want to make sure it's mostly on the ground. That way the animal is capturing the whole territory and not leaving any gaps. And to scale it, you're just going to use these sliders right here, and that will define the whole area. And so if you don't scale it, sometimes you'll end up with like these dead zones underneath the bounding box, which the rabbit can't get into, so you'll end up making a smaller area. But we can kind of decrease it once we figure it out, so it's not so big in the level. And then you'll notice a big thing to kind of get off the bat is this territory 700. So now we know this bounding box is called territory 700. And for once we have our name of our territory defined where we want it, we would then click on our hare or whatever we want to be bound to this area. And so you go for your spawning preferences, which we're not using any spawners. Can the hare... Looks like the hare can't be bound, so it's only for roaming creatures. So it could potentially even be... Okay, there we go. So let's go ahead, just briefly drag over a deer. Let the deer snap to the floor. And so I use it mostly for my wolves and badgers and stuff like that, to keep them from running around and killing enemies. So with your deer selected, you'll see you have a control zone. So you want to go ahead and go to that control zone, and there we have territory 700. And with the territory selected, that will allow you to now bind this deer to this box, and the deer will basically roam around randomly within this box. So let's go ahead, put our deer back, delete that territory box, and it's really that simple for controlling your animals. And then what you'll see with a lot of my snipers, what can end up happening is they'll leave and they'll climb. Well, I didn't give them ladders either for a reason, but they'll kind of leave and they're able to run around, and you don't want that if you want static sniper towers. And so within my AI management control zones, then I go to my NPCs. You can give them several options. You have rush points, And what rush points do is it defines an area for them to move to throughout the level. And so you can have multiple rush points, let's say right here. And so we see rush point 700. So you could have this guy, and basically if anything happens, I mean, a better example would be to move him to this gun. So if this guy ends up moving through anything or spotting an enemy or anything like that, you can have him, and now it'll show you he's going to run and move to this point right here. So rush points are kind of cool for setting up with either like different enemy AIs to create kind of some dynamic situations throughout your level. As well, you have, let's see, which one am I using for this? Right there. So you have move and defend, and that's generally the one I use a lot, or just defend. If they're on the ground like this, I let them be move and defend, or cautious, which is another one, defend cautious, which means defend cautious is like they're always kind of alerted and kind of really hyperactive, which is generally not super great unless you have a certain area maybe and you want them to be really alert. You can do that. Move and defend is generally good, allows them to still patrol quite actively, and they will defend the area. And then defend is what I use for my snipers up here. So I just have them on a simple defend. They'll stand up here, they'll kind of move from side to side. They can still move in the defend area, but they're less active. Generally I want them just kind of out there looking around, trying to spot people. And it's the same deal with them selected. You get your box number right here, the defend box number, and then have them bound to that box. So this will make your level a lot better, just way better. Because with the AI, what they naturally will do is they tend to just wander and go wherever the heck they want, and you generally don't want that. Now, what's cool about rush points, and I didn't use it in here because I kind of wanted my second wave outside enemies to be a little free floating, but what you could do is if you have multiple waves, you can actually set rush points. And so if I wanted these guys to infiltrate the base, I could create a rush point right here and then bind all of these guys. If I can find it, there it is, to this rush point. And now you'll see all of these AI with each one selected. You can have them move to that rush point. And so when they spawn, what they're going to do is they're all going to move to this area, and then once they hit this rush point, start moving around. So it's kind of cool, but it's really up to you how you want to utilize it. The bounding boxes are really the biggest thing. So for like anybody that I want to man a position, a specific position, I give them those within the level, and it kind of keeps them within there. Now, these can be overridden, and the way they get overridden is when they spot the player. So if you're trying to infiltrate this base and you move in and these guys spot you, their first instinct will be, okay, either shoot at them, man this gun, and if the player comes in here and they don't have a good line of sight, they're going to break this bounding box and can move freely outside of the bounding box. So don't think they're going to be completely stuck to this area, to the defined area you have set for them. It's not going to happen. They will break free, and that's a big issue when you have things like wolves and stuff like that, which was happening in my levels. The wolves were attacking the players, or the enemies would see the wolves, and they can break their bounding box for a specific engagement. So something to keep in mind when you're setting this up, and that's kind of why none of my snipers really have ladders. They do have these zip lines, but they rarely use them, and that's more to really help the enemy out and make them a little bit harder. But in general, these bounding boxes can be broken. Same with these alarms. The alarms come with a natural bounding box, so you can bind an enemy to a specific alarm to activate if they spot the enemy or there's an alert. But that's generally it for bounding boxes. That was really the biggest thing to figure out with this editor, was how to properly use them and kind of make your level feel more natural and not just have 25 AI randomly roaming around your map, because they will do that. And what I've seen people do before is use animation points, and I just didn't like that method. It doesn't feel right. It's not natural. It's a bit janky. So definitely utilize these if you're going to be making levels within the editor.